Hey everyone, welcome to the Tom's Hardware Podcast for March 8th, 2022. As always, I'm Tom's Hardware Editor-in-Chief, Avram Pilch, joined by Raspberry Pi expert Ash Hill. Les, our associate editor who's normally on is off this week, but we've got a very special guest for you, Ian Dunn of Bolt Industries, who has a fascinating Kickstarter out right now for what is the first, as far as I can see, the first full-size RP2040 powered mechanical keyboard. Uh, so, Ian, uh, can you tell the folks a little bit about yourself and what your experience is in the Maker and Pi community?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Ian Dunn of Bolt Industries. I'm a power grid operator by night, full-time maker and entrepreneur by day. Live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I've got a wife and two kids. I've been making stuff since I was old enough to hold a screwdriver pretty much. And I just kind of follow where the wind takes me, make what's interesting. Recently, in the last 3 years, I'd say I've kind of taken an interest in design for manufacturing, designing things in a way that they can be mass produced easily, which kind of led itself into the beginning of Bolt Industries. I kind of needed a brand for my stuff on the internet, and I started selling my stuff on Kickstarter. And that's how I got here today with this keyboard powered by the Raspberry Pi Pico.
So, Ian, your Bolt Industries Pico 87 mechanical keyboard. What can you tell us about that? And do you have one that you can show?
Yeah, so I've got this one sitting on my desk right now. I've got green and black keycaps on it at the moment. There, I think you can see it. A little bit of a glare from the windows. But what's so cool about it is, for one, the RP2040 is what powers it. I think, like you said, it's the only one that I know of out there that's powered by the RP2040, except for maybe a few obscure DIY applications. It's made of 3 layers of FR4 printed circuit board material. Looks the same all the way around. There's no case. It's just circuit board material. That's my style right there. There's the RP2040 peeking out. You can see it there. I've seen the HID library in the Arduino IDE before, and I've for years been looking at that, thinking how cool it would be to turn that into a full-size keyboard. And then the chip shortage came around, and other microcontrollers were in short supply, and then boom, out of nowhere came the Raspberry Pi Pico. And I thought, gee, that would be a perfect candidate for a keyboard, so I did it.
So, is this when folks get this? Well, first of all, it seems like you're fully backed. I'll put up a link to the Kickstarter here. It seems like you're fully backed, so looks like folks are going to be getting this. When they get it, is it going to be fully built, or is it going to be a kit for them to build themselves?
No, it's a soldering kit. Getting them actually manufactured, assembled, that's a whole other thing. And I've thought about doing that in the past, but based on feedback from past campaigns, people really do seem to enjoy putting the stuff together themselves. They want to do that. So I don't really feel the need to go all the lengths to get it manufactured. I don't think it would sell as well that way. People enjoy designing it and making it their own and putting it together and being involved in the whole process that way.
Yeah, no question. So, does it come with key switches and key caps?
Yeah, so the main reward tier, it includes a set of switches of your choice. I've got a handful of them to choose from, and a set of keycaps, of course. Everything you need to make it happen. The USB hub is something that makes this thing kind of cool. There's a little SL2.1C, I think, is the part number of the chip. That's the one thing that doesn't come with the basic kit, only because it's a smaller chip. It's not, I wouldn't say it's impossible to hand solder, but it's not easy for somebody just learning how to solder. But besides that, you get everything you need to put it together.
So, one thing I'm really the most curious about when I heard about this is how you've managed to get a Pico to control 87 different keys, because my understanding is like you only have so many GPIOs that you can use, and then of course, we've seen small things like this Adafruit KB2040, which has 12 keys on it. But how did you get it to support a full 87 keys?
So the key is a matrix with a diode that isolates each row from each column, and then the microcontroller has to make each column high and then read whatever keys are pressed on that row. They'll be in a high state, and then it shuts them off and does it again at a very rapid rate. It's the way most other keyboards work. Commercial keyboards, they'll have, like, I don't know how to describe it, stacked columns in each row so that you can have maybe as little as, say, 10 or 12 pins, GPIO pins on the microcontroller. But in this case, it uses every single pin on the Pico. There's actually one left over on one of the TP6 or TP7 pad on the bottom. Otherwise, every single pin it's taken by the matrix. And then, of course, the firmware has to know what to do with that. It has to interpret which two rows and columns are active and then send the right keystroke.
Are there any issues with N-key rollover with this? Like, what's the latency like?
Oh, I have to give a whole lot of credit to my friend Brian Dodonna. He really did 99.99% of the work on the firmware. Thank you very much, Brian. But yeah, that was the main thing he really fine-tuned. When I first started this, I used what programming skills I have, and I made a firmware. Let's say it sent keystrokes, but there was a lot of latency. And so, yeah, Brian's really put a lot of effort into fine-tuning that, so there really isn't any latency that I can see. He's a career programmer. He's a fast typist. He's got it fine-tuned to where it's just darn near perfect. You really don't see any latency at all, I don't think.
It really is impressive that it's all powered by the Pico, and I was curious if there were any hardware restrictions that impacted the final design.
Oh, making it such that somebody else can easily put it together. I might do a few things differently if it was just me building one for myself. But like that USB hub chip, I had to search far and wide for one that could be hand soldered. Most of them are microscopic grain of sand packages, as I like to call them, with a ball grid array. There's no way anybody's going to hand solder it. So there's better USB hubs out there, but they're impossible to hand solder. So I have to go with the one that can be hand soldered.
Speaking of hand soldering, if someone gets this, what type of tutorials and instructions are they going to get to help them build it?
The way I did it with my clock is I'll put a page on my web page with a long set of instructions and a short set of instructions, so you can go into every detail. Or even if you, in this case, this one's pretty darn simple. If you didn't read any of the instructions and just soldered it together, you'd probably do okay. And I do enjoy talking to people afterward. I'll always get a few emails from people asking for help with something. It's kind of a fun chance to actually talk to the people that are using my stuff and get to know them a little bit. I'm happy to help them out. So
I see you mentioned using the Arduino IDE to program it. This is a Pico. Is it possible to program it in CircuitPython or Arduino only?
Yeah, it'll run KMK as well, which runs on CircuitPython. That works just fine. So I've got a firmware written that it works. It sends keystrokes. It doesn't do anything fancy. That's one thing it's capable of, but I think the Arduino IDE firmware is what really sets it apart and makes it unique.
As far
I've
as
really taken the time to learn Python. I'm more of a C person in Arduino. That's my area of specialty. I really don't know what I'm doing in Python. I kind of hope somebody else will pick it up that does like Python and make it do something glamorous with Python, and I'll add whatever they come up with to my GitHub repo.
What about 3D printed casing for it? Is anyone working on that? Something if you wanted to put a case around it so you couldn't see the PCB?
Yeah, that's something it's been in the back of my mind. I may try that down the road. So one of my backers actually asked me about that. Same thing again. I think there's a good possibility maybe one of them will come up with something before I get around to it. The catch, though, is that it's a little bit bigger than what you can do on an average-sized open-frame 3D printer. So you'd have to do it in two halves, which could be done, but it wouldn't come out quite as pretty as if it was in one piece. or a laser cut top. That's something I'd like to try if you got a piece of acrylic and laser cut a top for it so you could see the PCB underneath. That'd be kind of cool.
Oh yeah, very slick.
One more thing I have yet to get to.
Yeah, that is really cool. So what type of so I see there are a lot of different switches available. Which ones do you like the best?
Oh, hands down, these blue ones. They've got a nice click and a nice bump. There's others that are just linear that don't have any click or bump. It feels like more like a regular membrane keypad.
Yeah.
I'll press them while talking so you can hear them there. Yeah, I like the click and the bump. It's hard to go wrong with.
Do those come pre-soldered, or if someone wanted to bring their own switches, different switches than you have, would they be able to solder them in themselves?
Yeah, there's a million ways to customize a keyboard. That's kind of the point of the whole mechanical keyboard thing. So I made a reward tier so that you can get just the boards and the hardware, everything but the switches and the keycaps if you've got a certain type of keycap that you want to put on. What I've got are just basic ABS keycaps. They're not fancy. They're just nice keycaps that are economical and do the job.
Was there anything that you wanted to add to the keyboard that didn't make its way, or anything that you maybe want to add in future iterations?
Oh, it's been a struggle with every one of my projects to figure out when to pull the trigger and launch it versus when to keep adding stuff.
It's always unfinished.
Do a version 2.0. Motorized feet is an idea I've been tossing around. I haven't really worked on that yet. So you press a button by the arrow keys and make it go up and down. That would be totally neat.
Oh, I like that idea. I've never seen that before. And I feel like feet, does it have flip out feet? What kind of feet does it have now?
No, they're kind of underwhelming. They're rubber sticky pads. There, that's the best view of it. You can position them where you want. I don't know how other people feel, but I kind of think flip-out feet are annoying. They fold up and you have to fumble to flip it back out. So rubber pads, as underwhelming as they are, they're nice because they don't fold back up and you have to fumble for them. They're just stuck there.
Yeah, I mean, I leave mine flipped out all the time, and as long as I don't, mess with it, they don't reflip themselves. But I appreciate that it has feet, because a lot of some keyboards, it's just like, yeah, just use it flat. And I personally don't find that very ergonomic when the keyboard is flat.
Yeah, no.
Sometimes you can get little rubber sticky pads off of Amazon to do the job, but yeah, it's not like having a dedicated one like you've got.
But key switches have, side topic here, key switches have been my weekend because I just got a whole bunch of new key switches in. I'm trying, I'm a big clicky fan myself, so I've been trying to find the ultimate clicky switch. So I was a big fan of Kale box whites, but I'm trying other Kales now. So these are glazed greens that I had to order from China. I have some noble yellows in my keyboard right now that I'm trying, and then I have box white owl, which is the newest one, which is like the spring is just a little bit less than regular box white, because you just got to get, it's like making a keyboard your way is so important. It's so important to get it just so, and that's what's great about having something that's so customizable, and where you can customize the software, and you can customize the switches, you can customize the keycaps, and really like make it yours, because that is the part of your computer that you're interacting with the most. So it's so great that you're doing this. I also understand that you for folks who, so what are the different tiers for folks who want to contribute on the Kickstarter?
Well, I guess I haven't shown you the macro pad. That's the basic tier. There's not enough pins on the Pico to add 3 more columns, so I just did this separately with a whole another Pico. It's got the same kind of layout as the regular keyboard, same features, same parts, just sits nicely next to the keyboard and functions as the numerical keypad if you wanted to, but it can also just as easily be used as a macro pad. You could, whatever you want to program in the Arduino IDE to make it do whatever you want. So that's the basic reward tier. That one's there without the switches and keycaps, just the bare bones board. And then I've got the combination of the two with the bare bones boards and hardware. That's a reward tier, and then you can get a set of all 4 together, or of course the macro pad and the keyboard together. I try to come up with a good mix of options. so that I cover it all. Making a gajillion reward tiers, though, can be kind of cumbersome. But I try to do a good sampling of what I think people would enjoy.
So we have a question, and I think there's many possible answers to this, but I'll let Ian give his. First, can one program a string of characters into a single key, something like Alt F1 to type my email address?
That's a good question. The answer is you bet. There's a keyboard.write command in the Arduino IDE, so you can make a hotkey to type your email or your zip code, your address, whatever you want. Or also, for that matter, Unicode. That's my personal favorite. You can do combinations of different keystrokes. So on Linux, you would type, to get an emoji, Control-Shift-U, and then the Unicode string 1F601 is the basic emoji, the little yellow smiley face, and then return. But rather than doing all that, you can program all that into one key, so you can get an omega symbol or a micro symbol or a degree symbol or an emoji, whatever you want, with a single keystroke. I find that really handy.
So my 2 cents on this matter, which obviously if you get a custom keyboard, it's very easy to program into the custom keyboard, also using CircuitPython, right? So I've been messing with CircuitPython on this thing, which is kind of similar to your macro pad, and you can easily, using CircuitPython, assign it key combos like that. But I like to, if you're using Windows, I like to combine that with Auto Hotkey, which is a great free scripting language that you can use to create hotkeys that not only can do like a piece of text, but can do like all kinds of mouse movements and things like that. And so what I've done on my home computer is, for example, there's things that you can't get a menu option for, like Google Docs. You want to pull down something from the pull down menu and move your mouse over to it, right? And I programmed key combinations for that. And then what I can do with a macro pad is I've programmed the macro pad keys to be F13 through 24, because those don't conflict with anything, because unless you have a terminal keyboard that already has F13 through 24. So you can then assign F13 through 24 to anything and not worry about it possibly to any action, and not worry about it possibly conflicting with something that is already being used by a particular program. So there's a lot of ways to get at that. Now, of course, to use something like Auto Hotkey, that's that's built into the OS. So if you move to a different computer, you move to a different OS, that doesn't stick with you as well as something that is in the firmware of the keyboard, like you would be doing with Arduino. So Barry says, I don't know any answers about this, perhaps Ian does. I keep watching tutorials and they keep complaining about GPIO 15 on the Pico. Can someone please ask the powers that be about this? Have you had any issues with pin 15?
No, I can't really speak to that. I want to say I read something about that somewhere, and I can't remember what the deal was with it, but I personally, that's probably column 15 on the keyboard. I suppose I'd have to look at my schematic to be sure, but it uses it and it works.
Yeah. So I know, Ian, Bolt Industries, this obviously the keyboard is obviously top of mind, a really exciting project, but you actually have some other projects that you've worked on that are really cool as well, and some of which you can actually buy at the Bolt Industries website right now. Can you show us those?
Absolutely. So I kind of got my start with a 6-inch PCB ruler. It has the Raspberry Pi GPIO pinout. It's kind of themed after everything Raspberry Pi and a little bit of electronics. That was a fun one. And then that kind of led to the next version, the 12-inch ruler. I actually did 2 of these. I did the second one after the Raspberry Pi Pico came out, just because I couldn't help it. I wanted one for myself, if nothing else. And if I'm going to go to all that trouble, then I might as well do a Kickstarter for it. And after that, led to the 4017 digital logic clock. This is just kind of something that I'd always wanted to do, and finally gained enough electronics know-how, I guess, to actually make it happen. What's so unique about it is that it doesn't use any microcontrollers. It's all old 4000 series digital logic chips. It starts out with a crystal oscillator and the next chip counts the pulses and divides that down to a 1 hertz signal, and then a bunch of 4017 decade counter ICs that count up to 60 or 59 and advance the next segment and then move on. So that one's in the bag, that one's behind me. And then I kind of took a detour to do the keyboard just to not do 2 clocks at one time. But then the next one probably will be the vacuum fluorescent display clock. I don't know if you can see it with the light coming in the window.
Oh yeah, we can see it. Looks fantastic.
The segments are lit up there in a nice iridescent green. This one's the same thing in that it doesn't use any microcontrollers. It's all old digital logic. But what's different about it is that the layers each do something different. So my idea is that it'll be somewhat universal. The first layer is what actually keeps the time, and then in this case, the second layer is converting a binary coded decimal time format into a 7-segment display, and then the top layer, of course, is just the drivers and everything for the VFD tubes that makes them work. They're kind of different in their power requirements and what makes them light up. So the idea is that I'll open source the bottom layer, well, all of it, but my hope is that somebody else will come along and use my design and make something else cool that fits on top of it, and I'll come up with a few different display output formats. Not sure exactly how I'll work that into a final product, but that's what I've got so far on it. It's a good, well-tuned working VFD clock at this point.
So you design all the PCBs yourself?
Oh, yeah.
When did you get started with PCB design? Because that one clock with the LEDs, that had a very pretty picture on it.
Oh yeah, I actually have a UV inkjet printer that I got for just this purpose. It's a regular black PCB, but out in my garage, I've got this cool printer that prints high resolution graphic images onto just about anything.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it makes for a really nice looking clock. Yeah, designing the PCBs, that's really my favorite part. It's cumbersome to go from a breadboard to a working PCB and getting the layout just right and everything. It takes a few design revisions, but that's what I really enjoy the most.
What application do you like to use for designing them?
Oh, you've pretty much seen it. Whatever comes to mind. Most of the time, I enjoy perfecting my stuff to the point that it can be mass produced and sold, but one that I did recently, I've got this remote controlled gate outside. I designed a PCB for that. It was a proprietary black box kind of deal, and I got frustrated with their tech support. They weren't much help, so I just chopped off their controller and made my own with a PCB and a Pico.
That's great.
I had fun with that one.
That's a good practical use case for the Pi.
Yeah.
So how long have you been doing PCB design?
Oh, I want to say it's been about 5 years now. I would say I was kind of late to the party when the low-cost Chinese PCB fab houses came into the picture. I was busy raising my infant kids at that point, I guess, when those became a thing. And then at one point I saw an ad for one of them on my sidebar and went, whoa, what's this? And I tried it one time and I pretty quickly realized, oh, this is life-changing. Being able to make a permanent circuit board for a thing that otherwise would just be stuck on a breadboard. That's when I got really serious about it, because I can preserve stuff on a decent circuit board instead of just being confined to a breadboard or one of those lousy perf board things.
Right.
Yeah, no question about it. So those are some really amazing projects that we really look forward to seeing more of. Ash, you've, as always, documented some of the best projects that we've seen this month. What are some of your favorites?
Okay, so for those who are unfamiliar with what we do at Tom's Hardware, we cover Raspberry Pi projects all week long, and once a month we gather a list of the top 10 best projects of the last month. And I'm just going to touch on a couple of projects that are featured on the list, but if you want to find the full list, just go to tomshardware.com. In fact, I'm going to pull it up right here so I can talk to you about a few. If you have it open already, Avram, you can maybe pull up the article on the screen for us.
Okay, one sec.
Yeah.
I will do that.
And even though we say these are the best, I mean, the ones that haven't made its way to the list, they're still really, really good, and it's worth perusing our Raspberry Pi topic.
So obviously, we have the 3D. We have OpenScan, right?
Oh yeah, OpenScan. That one's a photogrammetry project, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that uses a Raspberry Pi and a camera in a 3D printed rig that will spin around an object and take a 3D scan of it. And the latest update that they had allows compatibility with the new Arducam. So the precision of these 3D scans is just truly remarkable. I think you can see the picture on the list of the safety pin that they scanned with it.
Wow, impressive.
It really is. I haven't used it yet, but it makes you want to, especially if you have a 3D printer. Maybe you want to duplicate something. I think the next one is the security camera window.
Yes, it is a security camera window.
Yeah, so that one, it doesn't just look like a window. It's actually has a functional purpose. This user made it for their office, which is so far away from home, and they didn't have any windows, so they just slapped some molding onto a monitor, put a Raspberry Pi on it, and tapped into their home security camera. So it's not just a random picture or scenery. It's practical. It's their home. Ooh, and this one leads into something I've made today. So this project, this one's really cool. They're using a Raspberry Pi to tap into a trinocular microscope, and I don't quite have a trinocular microscope, but if you make me big again, I can show you something cool that I'm working on. Thanks, Abram. I'm going to switch this over here so you can see what I see. My laptop's here, and right over there is a CRT TV, which is pretty fun. And connected to it is a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus off to my side. And this Pi connects to the TV using an adapter. There it goes. It's USB powered. Connects to the RCA ports there in the front. And HDMI works. I got audio output and everything earlier. It was really cool. The reason I set it up was actually because of this Pi station, but let's talk about that later, maybe next week. First, I want to show you this really cool USB microscope I have. It's not quite as, not going to get as impressive as that trinocular microscope project on our list was, but see if you can identify this board. If I can get it to focus for us. So you should see a Pi logo. Do you see the Pi? All right.
Yes.
What board is this?
Ian, what do you think it is?
I'm thinking that can be none other than a Raspberry Pi.
Yes. I'm going to try to guess which one, though. Let me see. Oh, I got it. It's a Pico.
Yep, it's a Pico. All right, round two. I've got another.
You gave it away because the word Pico appeared under the microscope.
I'm just impressed you're able to read it with the camera, honestly. What about this one?
Well, I'm going to go with it. That is some type of a Pi Zero. Because I don't know if that's a 02 or a 0 regular, but the unsoldered GPIO pins and the formation of them give it away for me.
All right, what about this one here? If I can try to avoid the name of it.
Done. Ian, what do you think?
I'm thinking that's got to be one of the older Raspberry Pi boards, a Model 3B or older. I think I see a big HDMI connector there in the camera, that FPV connector that used to be over there next to it.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, but I think the position of the USB on that makes me think it might be a 3A.
You're both wrong.
Oh.
So that's all I've got for you guys today. But I think that's really cool that it was just plug and play. This is like a no-name USB. What do you want? I don't even know if I want to call it a microscope, but it has a microscopic camera on it, right? And it didn't require anything special to pick up on the Raspberry Pi. I just plugged it in, and it worked well enough to see all of that. So all I'm missing is a stand, and this would be really good to have on hand for soldering small things, perhaps on a keyboard, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. That would be perfect for soldering really small surface mount stuff.
What do you use to help you solder, Ian?
Me, I just have a nice a hot air rework station with a nice needlepoint soldering iron. I would like to acquire the skill of soldering really small ball grid array stuff, but as long as I'm designing something that needs to be able to be put together by somebody else, I don't really have a reason to.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, seeing the smaller stuff has definitely been a huge issue for me with my soldering. Oh, beer goggler, I wish we had a Pi 5. We don't even know if a Pi 5 exists. We don't have
And how
inside
many would be made?
information. But yeah, I mean, I found that I've been using a magnifying glass, but it only gets. I'd rather be able to control the zoom level with something like that. So that is really cool. So I want to thank, of course, everyone for tuning in, and I want to especially thank Ian for joining us to share the amazing work he's doing on Bolt Industries. Where is the best place folks can go to learn about all of your projects?
boltind.com, Bolt Industries abbreviated. I tend to always put something up there. I'm also on Hackaday, Mountain Man NM, I think. Search for my projects there. You'll find me. I open source some other stuff like the gate opener there.
Wow, fantastic. Well, thank you so much. As always, we are here at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. UTC. Although I don't know, maybe next week it's going to be 6:30 p.m. UTC, because we go at based on 2:30 p.m. Eastern, and we have Sunday is daylight savings time, so we spring forward. Is that right? And so I'm not sure if the UK springs forward yet. I think maybe they spring forward after us. So this might be one of those weeks of the year where we're actually 4 hours. They're actually 4 hours ahead instead of 5. I'll have to look that up, but 2:30 p.m. Eastern for sure. Next week and Tuesday. And thank you all so much. We'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.